The bank was crowded that morning, the usual hum of people waiting in line, signing forms, and talking softly under the fluorescent lights. Among them stood a simple woman named Clara, dressed in a faded floral dress, holding a small purse close to her chest. Her eyes showed a quiet determination, though she looked out of place in the polished, marble-floored building. She wasn't there to withdraw much, just to resolve a small issue with her account. But the way the staff looked at her, it was clear they judged her before she even spoke. When Clara approached the counter, the teller frowned, then whispered something to the manager. Within minutes, she was told she didn't belong there and asked to leave. The security guard, following orders, escorted her out as the crowd watched. Her voice trembled as she tried to explain, "I just need to speak with someone about my account." But no one listened. The manager crossed his arms, saying, "Ma'am, we can't assist you. Please leave before we call the police." Outside, Clara stood on the sidewalk, tears welling up, not from anger, but from humiliation. People passed by without stopping. She had always believed kindness still existed, that respect wasn't something you had to wear expensive clothes to earn. But in that moment, everything she believed about decency seemed to shatter. Just as she turned to walk away, a sleek black car pulled up in front of the bank. The doorman straightened immediately, and the same manager who had insulted her froze. A tall man stepped out, confident, sharply dressed, and familiar. Clara's heart skipped a beat. The murmurs spread through the crowd as he looked around and asked in a calm but firm voice, "Who dared to throw my wife out of my bank?" The moment the man's voice echoed through the bank lobby, silence filled the air. Everyone turned toward him, their expressions changing from irritation to panic. The manager's confident posture melted into a knees as he realized who had just walked in. The man was Ethan Turner, the owner of the very bank they worked for. But more than that, he was Clara's husband, a fact none of them had known. Clara stood still, her hands trembling slightly. She had never liked using Ethan's name or power to get her way. She preferred to live simply, to be treated like any other person. That was why she had come alone. No fancy car, no assistant, just herself and her faith in basic human decency. But now, seeing her husband walk toward her with concern in his eyes, she couldn't hold back her tears anymore. Ethan reached her side and gently took her hand. "Clara, what happened?" he asked softly. The bank employees avoided his gaze, hoping she wouldn't answer. But the truth was already written across her face. The humiliation, the judgment, the cold treatment she had endured. Meanwhile, whispers rippled through the customers standing nearby. Some began murmuring apologies, while others just stared in disbelief. The same security guard who had forced her out now stood frozen, unable to meet her eyes. Ethan turned to the manager, his calm expression now sharp with disappointment. "So this is how you treat people?" he said quietly, yet his tone carried weight. The manager stuttered, trying to explain it was a misunderstanding, but the damage was done. Clara looked around at the faces that had dismissed her only minutes ago. She didn't want revenge, just respect. But as Ethan's gaze hardened, everyone in that room knew this day was far from over. The manager's voice cracked as he tried to defend himself. "Sir, we didn't know. She never said she was your wife." Ethan's jaw tightened. And why would that matter? His question hung heavy in the air, leaving the room suffocatingly quiet. The employees shifted uncomfortably, realizing that the real issue wasn't Clara's identity. It was how quickly they had judged her based on appearance. Clara stood beside Ethan, still overwhelmed. She wasn't angry anymore. She was simply disappointed. She had always believed that people revealed their true nature not when they were being watched, but when they thought no one important was looking. And today, she had seen exactly that. The assistant manager, a younger woman who had watched the whole scene unfold, stepped forward hesitantly. "Mr. Turner," she said softly, "I told them to be patient, but they didn't listen." Ethan gave her a nod, acknowledging her honesty. Her courage, however small, broke the wall of silence. Now everyone began to speak at once. Excuses, apologies, denials, all blending into noise. Meanwhile, the customers who had witnessed the entire incident started whispering among themselves. Some recorded the moment on their phones, realizing it would soon spread beyond the walls of this branch. Others looked guilty, remembering how they had watched Clara being thrown out without saying a word. Clara turned toward the crowd. "All I wanted was to fix a small issue with my account," she said softly. "I didn't come here expecting special treatment, just kindness." Ethan's eyes darkened. He could feel the weight of her words more than anyone else. This wasn't about money or ownership anymore. It was about dignity. And deep down, everyone knew this confrontation was only beginning. The atmosphere inside the bank grew heavy, every second stretching longer than the last. Ethan's calm exterior was beginning to crack, his patience worn thin by the excuses pouring out of the staff. The manager's face was pale now, realizing that his entire career might collapse because of one cruel decision made out of arrogance. Still, he tried to defend himself, his voice trembling. "Sir, it was just a misunderstanding. We were only following policy." Ethan's expression turned cold. "Your policy allows you to humiliate people who look ordinary?" His voice was low but powerful enough to silence the room again. Clara watched quietly, her heart pounding. She didn't want this scene, didn't want him to lash out on her behalf, but at the same time, she couldn't deny the small part of her that wanted them to finally understand how wrong they had been. Across the lobby, a customer raised his voice. "I saw what happened. She didn't do anything wrong." His words broke through the tension, and suddenly others joined in, murmurs of agreement spreading through the crowd. The assistant manager stepped forward again, her voice shaking but clear. "Sir, I think it's time the truth is said. This isn't the first time something like this has happened here." Her words hit like a shockwave. Ethan turned to her sharply, and the staff froze. The manager's face twisted in panic. "That's not true," he snapped, but the look in her eyes said otherwise. The whispers grew louder, and phones were recording again. Every moment, every expression, every word. Clara looked up at Ethan, her voice barely a whisper. "Please, don't make a scene." But it was too late. The truth was spilling out, and the entire bank stood on the edge of something that couldn't be undone. The room was buzzing with unease when the assistant manager took a deep breath and stepped forward again. Her voice trembled, but there was determination behind it. "Mar, Turner, there's something you need to know. What happened to your wife today? It wasn't an accident." The manager gave specific instructions to treat anyone without a premium account or a business background as low priority. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Ethan's eyes narrowed, and Clara's heart sank. The manager's hands shook as he tried to interrupt, but she continued. "There's been a pattern. People coming here for help, treated rudely, even denied service if they didn't look important. It's been going on for months." Ethan turned toward the manager, his voice cold and steady. "Is that true?" The manager stammered. "Sir, that's just how we maintain our image, our high-end clients expect." But he couldn't finish the sentence. His own words betrayed him. The customers watching began recording more aggressively now, sensing a story much bigger than a single act of disrespect. Clara felt her stomach twist. She had always known the world could be unfair, but to see it so blatantly in her husband's own institution cut deep. Ethan's mind raced, and now that foundation was being torn apart before his eyes. Then, just as the tension reached its peak, another man entered through the glass doors, one of Ethan's senior partners, Mr. Reed. His expression was grim. "Ethan," he said quietly but firmly, "we need to talk. The board already knows what's happening here. This isn't the first complaint. It's the last one they'll ignore." Ethan froze, realizing the problem was far deeper than one manager's behavior. The tension in the room felt like it could snap at any second. Ethan turned to face Mr. Reed, his expression darkening as he realized just how deep this went. "How long have you known?" he asked quietly. Mr. Reed hesitated, avoiding his gaze. "Long enough," he admitted. "There were reports, but they were buried. The board thought handling it quietly would protect the brand." The words hit Ethan like a punch. His company, the bank he built from the ground up with honesty and trust, had been hiding corruption behind polished walls and polite smiles. Clara looked between the two men, her heart heavy. This was no longer just about her being thrown out. It was about a system that had lost its humanity. Ethan stepped forward, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "Then it ends today," he said firmly. He turned toward the shocked employees and customers. Every complaint, every mistreated customer, every voice ignored, I want it investigated." The staff stood frozen, unsure whether to feel fear or relief. The manager tried to plead, but Ethan stopped him with a simple gesture. "You forgot what respect means. That's not something any policy can fix." Clara gently placed her hand on Ethan's arm, grounding him, reminding him of the reason he built this bank, not for wealth, but for people like her. He glanced at the screen and his face went pale. Someone leaked the video. For a brief moment, silence returned. Then Ethan looked at Clara, a faint smile crossing his face. Maybe that's exactly what this place needs, the truth out in the open. The flashing cameras outside the bank painted the glass doors with bursts of light. Reporters shouted questions, trying to capture every reaction. Ethan stepped forward, his hand still holding Clara's, and spoke calmly but firmly to the crowd. "Today showed me something I should never have forgotten," he said. "No company, no bank, no success means anything if we forget how to treat people with respect." His words echoed through the lobby and out into the street, and for the first time that day, there was silence, not of fear, but of reflection. Clara looked at him with quiet pride. Ethan turned to her and said, "You did the right thing." In the days that followed, the video spread everywhere. People online talked about the bank owner's wife incident, but more importantly, it sparked conversations about dignity, kindness, and equality. Ethan made sure the bank launched new programs focused on fair treatment and customer care, no matter a person's background. The manager quietly resigned, and the culture inside the bank began to shift toward empathy rather than appearances. One morning, Clara walked back into the same branch, this time greeted with warm smiles. The teller, who once ignored her now, stood up to welcome her personally. She smiled kindly and said, "Thank you. But remember, respect isn't for who we are. It's for being human." As she walked out into the sunlight, the world suddenly felt a little kinder, a little fairer, and a lot more awake.